Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So I'm thinking today will probably be the last one of this. I already have something planned for the next one, so I will be back with another long form thing. But let's go ahead and dive in. This is the Aubrey finale moment. I just want to say out the gate, Aubrey would be proud of me. I have not been in my deficit. I have officially broken, like Gretchen Wieners in Mean Girls. I'm just kidding. But I've cracked, and I am eating more. So, yeah, that'll probably last. Realistically, it's probably going to be till after Christmas. But hey, I made it a lot further than I did last year. And yeah, I'm going to just eat a bit more and try to reset so we can do a hard launch basically after Christmas. So yeah, I will keep you guys posted on that. I feel so much better being out of a deficit. Oh my God. But it is what it is. It helps me see the future. It's like, okay, it will end. Like, the hypo will be better post deficit. So it's kind of nice, I guess, to see that because I can kind of hold on to that hope too and be like, yeah, I'm in a lot better of a position. Because I used to be like super hypothyroid, even not being in a deficit, and now it's a lot less when I'm not. It's so drastically less. So yeah, anyways, Aubrey's proud. This is Aubrey's little moment. She can pretend that I'm going to gain all the weight back right now. So you go ahead and pretend, Aubrey. You feel it. I hate it. I don't know why there's this toxic part of me that's like, Aubrey is like happy that I'm doing this. Like, I don't know why I feel that. I know it's delusional. That's delusional. I don't think Aubrey cares, but still, it's just the mental gymnastics I play within. And I think it's kind of funny to myself, but I'm still going to continue going to the gym. So I'm going to do some gains, bro. Throughout December gains. But anyways, I will continue on with the video. I just had to update you guys on that. So if I look like I'm gaining 200 pounds, or no, what is it, 130 pounds in this month, that's why. I'm just kidding. Okay, let's go on.
Thing to say, hey, there's space for everyone. It's a very different thing to say when that's embedded in what is functionally like an infomercial for weight loss drugs, right? That like you're sort of saying like, hey, everyone is welcome here as long as you buy this one product, right? And like all of these different sort of opinions are welcome. I mean, I think one of the other things that really, really stood out to me about the special that I found really, really disheartening is that they sort of flip back and forth in this special between
I'm trying to get back into it.
And interpersonal quote unquote benefits of weight loss and medical quote unquote benefits of weight loss. So they talk to a teenager at one point and they're like, her blood sugar's down and she went to prom. And you're like, so one of those is medical, guys.
I think that though is so much of Ozempic discourse in general. I think so much of when people talk about Ozempic, it's their anti-fatness couched in like, but isn't this a medical miracle? It's like, how often do you see people truly thrilled about like medical breakthroughs? It's just, I find it hard to believe that people's excitement, especially thin people's excitement about Ozempic, is entirely because they're just like thrilled about the medical.
There are thin people that have diabetes, by the way, Matt. Gosh, there are thin people who have family members that have diabetes. There are thin people that have fat people in their family. I know that according to you guys in the fat acceptance sphere, that doesn't exist because mud genetics, bullshit, logic, that isn't real. But that is also a thing. That is very stupid. Matt, you are showing your lack of intelligence and your lack of empathy. I only say that because I know he probably prides himself on being empathetic. But come on, dude. Be a little bit more imaginative. Be a little bit more imaginative in your mind, and you might see things. Broaden your horizons a bit. Don't be so close-minded, Matt. Don't be so close-minded. I'm only saying things. I'm saying things that I know if he were to hear me say them, it would piss him off. But that's what I do, because you guys know it's just one of those kinds of days, okay? It's just one of those kinds of nights, okay? Okay. I will have to say, I do love you guys comparing me to Wicked. I think it's hilarious. Not me, also, literally at the beginning of the year, I think like in February or March, I would literally like listen to Defying Gravity. And I felt like I was defying gravity and getting out of super morbid obesity. And I did, Aubrey. I did. Screw you, Aubrey. I got out, and I'm still out. A couple of you guys have been sending me this TikTok where she's like, 3 to 5 years. Okay, Aubrey. I guess we got 6 more months. A little bit over 6 more months. I guess all the weight's going to come back in August. Oh, we should do a celebration moment in August for sure when the weight hasn't come back. I love that when I'm out of a deficit and like I'm fully back to my vitality, I'm just more ready to fight. It's like, okay, this is what we have to look forward to, okay? Now you guys know if I'm ever tamer, it's because my energy is going towards a deficit. So yeah, it should be interesting to get to, hopefully, God willing, post-deficit Alex in 2025. That will be spicy. That will be interesting. I feel like a reputation era is coming real soon. But anyways, let's go.
Benefits of this drug. It just seems a lot more likely to me that they're like, this idea that we can end fatness now.
Yes. I mean, like, listen, part of the reason that I have that full body clench that we were talking about earlier is that the discourse that I feel like I'm experiencing right now as a fat person is on another planet from the discourse that I feel like a lot of people who are not fat think that they're contributing to, which is, I think people are thinking genuine, like, scientific miracle. I'm on the side of science. This is great. Yay. Look at all this stuff. We don't have to have all these healthcare problems. I would say a couple of things. One, that's born of decades of scapegoating fat people for the cost of private insurance, right? That's born of news stories that really, really decontextualize a bunch.
What is she even saying? What is your point, Aubrey? Like, seriously. Are you going to seriously try to argue that obesity is not having any effect on healthcare costs? Is that what you're actually arguing? I need to know. Let's see if she goes further.
Bunch of what we know about fat people's health and well-being and all of that sort of stuff. And I think for the last, 10 or 15 years, we sort of had this moment where people who weren't fat could see themselves as maybe being, whether or not they intended to, maybe being part of the villain in a fat person's story, right? And
what? What are you even saying? We're getting into fat acceptance folklore. You know what, though? Remember, the original name of the witch is the folklore witch. It has to do with the mad woman, for my Swifties in the audience. I'm always calling out fat acceptance folklore, okay? What the hell are you saying? What is this book that you've written? Is this one of your books, Aubrey?
Carrying around some guilt around that or wanting to exercise that guilt in some way.
What
have you?
And she's arguing for thin guilt. Do you guys have thin guilt? Do you? Let me know. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you guys have thin guilt?
What feels like it's happening right now is all of that feeling of...
I can assure you I will have zero thin guilt. Zero. Sometimes I have survivor's guilt. Getting out of super morbid obesity, I've experienced that. That was part of my tortured. I almost said tortured lesbian. That is what I call that album, by the way. I'm just on one right now. This is the finale. It's December. I told y'all I'm messier in December. But in my tortured my tortured morbid obesity era, that was something I struggled with, was survivor's guilt, which again, it's not what Aubrey would want to hear, because it literally acknowledges the health consequences and effects of being Aubrey's size. But it is a reality. And so when I got out, I had that kind of guilt, but it wasn't, I'm never going to have thin guilt. You can shove that where the sun don't shine, Aubrey. It's never going to happen here.
Like, however fleeting it was, that feeling of accountability to fat people just really seems to be melting away, and people
So basically she's saying the social pressure that we had created and the shaming around people for not, I don't know, wanting to sleep with every fat person they see, or I don't even know what the heck she thinks the thins are doing. But she's basically saying that we had gotten a grasp on the thins and really shamed them into submission. And now with Ozempic, that's all faded away. I just did an Aubrey translation for you. To which I say, Aubrey, here's a secret for you, okay? Here's a secret. Are you ready? Are you ready? Just because someone doesn't say something doesn't mean that they aren't thinking it the whole entire time. I would think you would know that, Aubrey, especially being a part of the gay community. There's a lot of people that don't say things but feel a certain way in that community. Shh. That's the tea, sis.
Celebrating their belief.
It never changed. You were just caught up on TikTok. You were caught up in the social media algorithms. It wasn't real. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're being forced to see that it isn't real. But it wasn't.
Belief that we're about to live in a world where they don't have to look at fat people so often.
Yeah, I mean,
oh my God. Yes, Aubrey, because that's what every thin person wakes up thinking about, is how many fat people they have to see in a day. Totally, Aubrey. It's not a projection at all. Here's the thing, Aubrey. Most people don't constantly think about body size. I know that that's really can be tough to understand, but it is a reality of life. And I get it. I totally get it. Again, I've been there. I've had the E followed by the letter D. I've had it. Lived it, almost died by it, got out. I still do talk about fatness and stuff quite a bit because it's literally my channel. But in terms of my personal life, especially the longer I'm out of it, I'm past my tortured Mo era, my tortured Moet era, deep in Obesity, and I would say I don't really think about that stuff anymore. The stuff that I think about, to bring it back to Brat, what I think about all the time is more so the feeling of, what if I had figured this out sooner? What if I had lost it sooner? How would my life be different? What if I had never gone into that disorder? That's the kind of stuff I think about all the time, because the disorder is a trauma in my life in and of itself, and it's a long-standing one. It lasted a long time. And so I think about that kind of stuff a lot more than I think about how many fat people I'm seeing in a day, or comparing body sizes, or whatever else, being concerned if a shirt fits me or not. Like, I don't really think about that stuff anymore because I'm out of it. I think about other things. I think about the state of my life and where I'm going, and those kinds of questions, and those are bigger things, which honestly they were probably a little too scary for me before when I was in the disorder, and I never thought about them enough because I was always going to the disorder. So it's like I never found the answers to those questions, but guess what? I can now. And I do. And that's what I think about all the time. I don't think about body size comparisons and clothing sizes and a new diet to try or food. I don't think about that all the time. I don't. I still think about my hypothyroidism, but I have to consider it because it's still there within the weight loss journey. Although I can see once I'm out of the deficit, it's almost non-existent, even in the dead of winter. So once I'm done losing, I probably will be done. And I try to hold on to hope now about things. I'm just trying to change how I think in general. And that's what I think about all the time is how do I reframe my mind with the worst of all this being behind me? It's a lot deeper, a lot more complicated than what I was capable of when I was in the disorder. So again, if you're in this issue, what else are you sacrificing to be in it? What mental space are you sacrificing? It's a waste. Don't be like Aubrey. I'm just going to say it flat out. Do not be like her. This is a waste. It's a waste of her time. It's a waste of her energy to be thinking about what the thins are thinking about and seeing another fat person on the street.
These pieces about like, is Ozempic the end of obesity?
No.
No, it's not for so many reasons. But the thing that jumps out to me about them, the hand wringing.
I don't think it is in and of itself, but I do think it is a tool in the toolbox. I think that it is something that is going to help bring about the end of at least the obesity crisis. I think if obesity and supermorbid obesity become rare again, that would be very helpful for everybody. There will always be people who choose to stay within toxic ritualistic mindsets. There will always be people who choose to not take care of themselves, be grossly overeating, etc., or eating really terrible quality food. And I want to exist in a country with freedom and stuff like that, and with enough, a beneficial enough economy or whatever, a good enough economy where people could afford to do that if they make the incorrect choice to do that. Therefore, there will always be obesity. What I'm most concerned with is I want people to understand that if you are obese, you don't have to be. And many, many, many people do not want to be. And that there are other ways of thinking about it. There are new ways of thinking about it. There is a new chapter forming and a new cultural conversation that I hope to be one of the voices to spearhead so that I can make sure, along with many, many other people, that if you do not want to be obese, you aren't. And most people don't for various reasons, including the health complications. And there are social costs. There are other costs that, in my opinion, are a bit less important than the health costs, because if you don't have your health, and again, weight is a preventable and fixable issue. I will always say that, even though I know it would piss off Aubrey so terribly. In fact, it brings me joy because I'm kind of a bitch. It brings me joy to piss her off in saying Weight is a fixable and preventable issue. Period. So that's what we need to keep pushing and understanding. And it needs to be pursued healthfully, and in most cases, slowly. And with an understanding of mental health, of the mental health side, and all these different things, and the grace and temperance that is required to lose the weight healthfully. And we need a supportive culture, not one that is sabotaging or gaslighting or dooming, like much of our culture, especially in the United States. We can start neutral, but it would be great if it was supportive, you know? So that's where I'm at, where it's like, we need a culture that is happy for a fat person going to the gym, which is mostly the case, you know, at this point, but it wasn't always the case. We need a culture that supports people living their lives as they lose the weight, rather than holding their breath until it's lost, because it doesn't help on many, many different reasons, in many, many different ways, especially psychologically. I think it is so difficult to hide away, to lose all the weight, then have all these social shifts and changes happen and hit you all at once. Like I've seen with people who have, a lot of people who lost the weight during the panorama and then come out to the world, and it's just too overwhelming, and it can be a risk factor. Those psychological things can be a risk factor to regain. So I always say here, live your life as you lose to the best of your ability. Do the most that you can. Deal with these anxieties piece by piece. That's why I talk about the social categories of fatness, and I talk about these things as I experience them, because I want there to be all this documented so I can do my part to help support people who are losing weight, or help people understand their own experience who have lost it. That's what I'm trying to do, because the social aspect is important to a lot of people, and it helps prevent that shock. One of the best things about weight loss that is done in a slower fashion is we can adjust to changes as they occur, and therefore reduce the anxiety around them. Do I love the personality contest aspect of being a small fat person? No, as an introvert, I do not have tons of riz. I never will. I am not demure. I am not mindful. I am a brat. It is hard. And I know damn well there's a lot of introvert fatties out there. There's a lot of introverts that are very big, that are horrified at this aspect. And I want you to know you will survive. It will be okay. You can get through it. And I know it's helpful to see somebody get through it. So I'm going to show it. That's what I'm doing here. That's what I'm doing here. You got to remember, you guys, I got to be an introvert that's doing this, because a lot of y'all introverts, my introverted girlies and boilies, you guys are the ones that are falling the most for fat acceptance. Let's just be real. I would say fat acceptance is one part. You know, there's a part of fat acceptance that is introvert cringe. That's what I'm going to say, because you're not getting out of the house. So you're not seeing reality. You're not seeing how things are. And I am getting out of the house. I'm going to be a counterpoint to Aubrey and say what she's saying is BS. That's what I'm trying to do here. Okay? So again, people sometimes have questioned, why do you talk about these social categories? Why do you talk about that? It's because I want you to have some kind of a map, so that when you're navigating out of it, it's easier for you. It's all a part of making it more accessible. That's the point. That's why I'm doing this. I want it to be more accessible, and this is the way that I can help, is doing this. And it does help me too. You guys help me, and I can help you too. And it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful because it helps me. I am the type of person where it does help me to talk about these things as I experience it. And it has helped a lot of you guys to hear about it too. So I really appreciate this extremely symbiotic relationship that we have, or dynamic that we have. And this activism has been such a joy to me. I don't know how to describe it. Gosh, I guess I'm still drunk in my hypo. I don't know why. I'm wanting to cry or something, but it really has been. It really has. I love it. That's why I'm here. That's why I show up, because I do love it truly to my core. But let's continue. My mom was making fun of me today. She was like, you really hate Aubrey. I'm like, Aubrey is my nemesis. Okay. She's like my equal opposite. She is just the ultimate opponent, basically. Because my mom horrifyingly, this is my mother, she horrifyingly tells me, I don't think Aubrey's that bad. I think the things that Aubrey says, it makes sense sometimes. I'm like, Mother, that's why she's so dangerous. Because she's not making sense. And that scares me. It does. But it's also like, I'm a fighter. Bring it on, Aubreysha. No, I'm just kidding. Bring it on, Aubrey. Bring it on, Aubrey. Oh, gosh. My mind.
About like is body positivity like null and void now? And it's just like, okay, so you can stop pretending like you ever cared.
Totally. And again, this is all of the stuff that's like, oh no, was body positivity all a lie? To me really reads as like, oh, nobody asked a fat person. Oh no, nobody asked a fat person. Because I feel like as a fat person, I can tell you, people changed the way that they couched their feelings, but their feelings about fatness and fat people didn't change, right? Like, there wasn't a point at which it was like super cool to be the fattest person in the room. There wasn't a point at which there were simply too many thin people rushing to the defense of fat people. None of that materialized for fat.
Is that really what her expectations are? Are we being real right now, Aubrey? That's not equality, Aubrey. You want to know what equality is? Equality is you're a fat person in the room. Period. End of sentence. At least on a social level. That's it. You're not going to be the coolest person because you're fat. That doesn't even make sense. I can assure you, people are typically not the coolest person just because they're thin either. Aubrey. The obsession with size. This is the obsession I tell you guys about. Do we know any thin people who are uncool? Do you know anybody who's thin that's not cool? Because I do. I knew a lot of them when I was growing up. I really did. Did you ever know any fat people who were popular? Because I did. It's almost like it wasn't the determining factor, Aubrey. Charisma is a thing. It's a thing that I don't have. I could only ever have introvert Riz. I will never be Rizzy. And it's okay. I don't care. I'm not one of those that's like, oh gosh, like, I'm ashamed of being introverted. I'm not. I'm introvert pride, period. But I'm also aware of my limits, and I am never going to be the dazzling girly pop on the floor. Like, I just am never going to be that person. I think even if I looked my best, I would still probably be a wallflower. Because that's just me. That is me. I would just be a better looking wallflower, you know? That's it. Because y'all see me on, sometimes you guys see me on here and you think I'm like this in public. I'm not. Put me in a room of more than 5 people and I shut up. Take me to a bar, I'm quiet. Take me to, you know, whatever. I'm not. You see me at the store, I'm silent with a sourpuss look on my face. It's like, and sometimes I'm irritated by the people in there because they're like blocking the aisles, and I'm like, it's not very rizzy, not very cute, but you know, it is what it is. I'm aware of that. I'm never going to be the coolest person in the room. It doesn't matter what size I am because I don't think about it in that disordered way, Aubrey.
At people in like a meaningful way. I think in a lot of ways, the sort of discourse around body positivity was much more a self-soothing story that people who weren't fat told themselves about their role in anti-fatness, right? That was sort of allowed them to think that there'd been a bigger and more meaningful shift than there had. And if you asked fat people, you know, same day, same stuff, you know, here we are again.
Natalie ContraPoints, who I've had on the show a couple times and who I reference often, she made a comment. It was in a completely different context, but she said something in one of her YouTube videos where she was basically like, shallow understanding creates shallow acceptance. And I think that's true in the body positivity conversation. I think it's also been true. I think about that a lot in the context of like the last 10-ish years of queer rights, which are so rapidly being eroded. Because it's like when you change what you're allowed to say, but never actually interrogate what you feel deep down.
Yeah.
And, you know, definitely not changing, you know, like laws and institutions that marginalize these groups of people. You're just making it so for the second that...
What are the laws that are marginalizing fat people? What are the laws that have ever marginalized fat people? They don't exist. That's the problem with that statement. See, I think a lot of times these people get on here and they talk about this issue and they just, you know, Aubrey and Matt, they are 2 people where they are just so impressed with themselves. Honestly, it's, to me, it is just, oh gosh, it's hard for me because I'm a bitch. So when I see that kind of thing, I want to just burst a bubble so bad, so bad. And I'm doing it. I mean, let's be real. What is the law, Matt? What is the law? Tell me now. You could never. It's just a little needle popping the balloon. That's all that is.
It is no longer fashionable to be like, quote unquote, more polite to fat people, queer people, people of color. Then we just stopped doing that and nothing meaningful ever changed, which is something that people who belong to these groups knew the whole time.
Yeah, totally. And I also feel like in this sort of moment around Ozempic, I feel like what I'm observing more often than not is both a sort of, thank God we don't have to think about that anymore, is one of...
That's definitely true. I do think a lot of people feel that way about the fatness issue, which I think we should think about it more, not less. As far as the being polite and whatever, I don't think fat acceptance ever helped. Like, if anything, I had more fat phobic, quote unquote, incidents when it was all the rage. I had more people comment on my weight post 2015 than ever before. other than that, when I was younger, it was mostly my family, which it cuts deep and it's an issue and blah, blah, blah. And it was definitely myself, hating my body and that kind of stuff, which is obviously very devastating and cuts deep and blah, blah, blah. The funny fat friending it. I take the Sharpie where I'd put the scissors, all of it. I've done that before, actually, which is kind of scarring. When I first heard that song, I was like, ooh, I've actually done that too. But again, it's not a fat thing. That's the E followed by the letter D thing. But what I will say is, I think fat acceptance made it worse, not better. I think in a lot of ways, people became more overtly hateful due to fat acceptance rhetoric because it was grating, cringy. It politicized the issue in a way that was completely unhelpful. And it just, I don't know. Like, I don't think, it's hard for me to understand how, like, for example, doing a video on TikTok where you're hugely fat and you're almost naked and you're just shaking everything around. How is that ever supposed to help anybody? Like, if anything, you just made yourself a laughingstock. And unfortunately, and thankfully, mostly unsuccessfully, it tried to force, it made a lot of people think that if you're fat, you believe in that, especially as a woman, which fatness has no correlation to any kind of internal thought, political, religious, philosophical, or otherwise. There's zero correlation. There are no cultural ties to fatness. I've told you guys this many times. If you see a person who's fat, you can't assume anything about them other than that they're fat. You can assume that in one way or another they're overeating, but that's about it. You can't really assume what they think about being fat or anything. And so that kind of, especially for women, fat acceptance, it put them in a box where even if they didn't agree with it, they felt such a social pressure to at least pretend to agree with it. Because if you were to go against it, it would be like this super radical moment in your life, which is not fair. Because most fat women never signed up for that. They just didn't. It's a minority. So it's like that kind of stuff, I don't think it's helpful. I really, really don't. It makes the issue probably worse, honestly, because a lot of the stuff that fat acceptance says, it's completely illogical. There's no real argument behind it. All of it is based in shaming, which, again, they claim that they're against, but all they do is shame to try to get you to listen to them by shaming you. It's not convincing. The only power they had was believing there was some kind of social pressure behind it, but people are seeing that that never actually existed. And so there's kind of this collective moment now where ever since the pandemic, people have been speaking out against it. So you really only had those 5 years, which, by the way, and I'm talking 2015 to 2020, which, by the way, you were never seen that positively then either. And I don't know if that's harsh to say, but it's true. Because like I said, I only ever had these public, stranger, fat acceptance, or like fat, like moments where I was shamed publicly for being fat within the context of that fat acceptance 5 years. So I think it made it worse, not better. And maybe that was a function of me living in Los Angeles. But like I said, I lived in Los Angeles my whole life until that point. And while there would be certain whispers about my weight as when I was in middle school or a kid or something. And obviously people felt the way they felt about me being a certain weight, which honestly most of the time was basically nothing. It was not something people felt the need to say something about, like to a stranger. And then it became that. Because you have people that are like, hey, bestie. If you say that not wanting to date a fat person is a preference, you're wrong. Did you really think that that was going to help the issue? Was that going to be anything other than grating and gross and disgusting? Was that going to do anything other than honestly make people actually hate fat people? Y'all are lucky for the Sam at every sizes, the Megan Ann's, the others, in the crew, so to speak, that are trying to bring some sanity back, because I don't know, maybe you're a little bit lucky about me too. And child, that's scary. No, I'm just kidding. Not the albatross, but it's like, maybe some of us in this space, we've humanized fat people a bit more. And we're not acting like a weird caricature of whatever the hell fat acceptance is, Aubrey. Maybe that's actually helped a bit, Aubrey. Rather than you saying, oh, gosh, I'll never get over this. I think, and I hate it because it's like a premium thing, and I really wish I could cover it. But I don't know if there would be a copyright issue, but where they talked about Wally. Oh my gosh. And then when Fat Acceptance was talking about the Wally world and how great it was. I mean, this is the stuff. This is the level of discourse, okay? But yes, I'm sure this really helped. This all helped. It's totally still helping.
One of the sort of underpinnings that happens here, right? The other one that feels like it's sort of at play here is that folks are trying to hang on to their deep desire for thinness, which is rooted in wild and pretty terrible judgments about fat people. Those two things are linked in a way that you can't really disentangle. So folks are trying to hang on to their deep and long-standing desire to be as thin as possible because of the ways that we judge thin people differently than fat people.
Oh my God. This is gold. Holy crap, Aubrey. Okay. If she's saying it's a hidden desire, it's usually not hidden. I don't know if I heard that wrong, but I'm not going to go back. If she's saying that it's a desire that could never be fulfilled, that's a lie. So it's like, and then she's saying as thin as possible. That's a projection. Thank you, Aubrey. I don't care to be as thin as possible. I don't even really think about an end goal. I don't know personally, which a lot of people have asked me. My first solid goal is 17% body fat. Once I get there, I want to assess where I'm at. But I'm still, think about 31%, 31.2. I have a ways to go, but it does go faster. It goes a lot faster now than when I was like almost 400 pounds. But I'm just saying, like, that's mostly for health reasons. And then if I want to do anything else aesthetically, that's up to me at the time. And that's my right. And I don't have to justify it to you, Aubrey. I really don't. So that's kind of my thoughts on it so far. I don't even really go by weight for my goal. I don't really care that much about the actual number. But I mean, I think if I had to give a loose number goal, I'm 6'1". I'd probably want to be between At the lowest, probably between 170 and 180. Maybe 170, 185, in that range, depending on how much muscle I have. That's not as thin as possible, Aubrey. Just a little spoiler for you. Okay? And like I said, the body fat percentage is more important to me. So I'm hoping I can reach there by around October of next year. That's my goal.
That means that they want to hang on to their anti-fatness, but they've also recognized now that fat people have a negative experience of the world, often at the hands of thin people. So people are like really trying to have it both ways, right? They really want to hang on to their anti-fatness, but they also really want to be sort of the heroes in fat people's stories. And I think that all of this sort of stuff around like, it's actually a scientific breakthrough and it's really good for people's health, becomes just like a return to I'm just concerned with your health sort of concern trolling. Totally. As a fig leaf for folks pretty deep and pretty uninterrogated anti-fatness. One of the things that we know for sure and for real.
And what would be pro-fatness, Aubrey? What would be pro? I want her to do like a book or a chart or something where she has like pro versus anti-fatness. That would be an interesting little chart for us to look at.
Real is that when folks are in pursuit of a thinner body and they engage in what are called body checking tendencies, they're checking their own bodies and specific features against other folks.
And do you think you ever check yours, Aubrey? Maybe when you're constantly comparing everyone else's or something like that? Maybe you shouldn't throw stones in glass houses. I'm just saying. What I will say, do not obsess. It's a risk factor for relapse. Do not obsess. Do not create anxiety around it. Do not do that. It's not necessary. You're not going to change that much from 1 minute to the next. I think obsession is bad. I will say that. But it goes both ways, Aubrey. It's always bad to obsess over it. It's not healthy. It's risky to do that. That's what I will say. It is risky to obsess over how you look weight-wise in the mirror. So I will say don't. Quick glance. Okay. And leave it alone for a while. If you check like once a day or something, I don't think that's that bad. But if you're like constantly doing it, and I had this one moment in September where I was struggling a bit. I was having some dysmorphia moments. I went through like almost every single E followed by the letter D trigger throughout this late spring and summer this year. It was wild. It was like the tour. It was my Eras tour. It was wild. But one of them was the dysmorphia, and I looked in the mirror. I want to say I was probably it had to have been almost 40 minutes. And it didn't change my eating behavior whatsoever. But I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, I have to be really careful not to do that again. Because I was like, that was very negative, what I just did. And, luckily I'd already divorced anxiety from behaviors. But that's still, sometimes when you're losing weight, the hormonal things can kind of, make you more obsessive or more negative, these kinds of things. So you have to understand that when you're in a deficit anyways, especially if you're hypothyroid, it does kind of take you down a notch vibrationally. I don't know how else to say it. It's not like terrible or anything, but you have to just be aware that like you might feel more sad. especially at a bigger size. Like, I was still morbid at the time. Again, tortured Mo, tortured Mo it. I was still tortured and morbid at the time. And so losing weight, it was still really difficult, more on a mental level. So have that mental discipline to make sure that you're not doing those things regardless, but especially if you have a past with when it comes to toxic ritualistic, or especially if you're in recovery, you then would have to make an avid effort not to. But that only ever happened once. I never did it again after that day because it's risky. Okay, so don't do that. That's what I will say.
That those folks report a great deal of relief at seeing someone my size.
But it's especially important to understand the emotion around it. It should be, if you're going to check how you look, it should be basically unemotional completely. And that day, it wasn't for me. It was bad. It was negative. And that's why I remember it. And that's why I remember how bad it was. And so I just made sure I didn't do it again, basically. And I didn't, because I wasn't in that habit or anything. So it's easy not to. But I will just say, like, you have to be very, just be aware if you're doing that and don't. Okay. Don't allow it. Stop it in its tracks. It's very negative to do that. But most of the time when I do, like, take a picture or I look in the mirror or something, it's just like, and I just continue on, and there's no emotion to it whatsoever. And I usually would just check once in a day. I haven't even checked in a hot ass minute. I don't even. But yeah. So, anyways, all that to say, I agree with her that that's negative. That's all I'm trying to say.
Because they think, at least I'm not that fat. At least it hasn't gotten that bad. So if folks are not doing that kind of plumbing the depths of where they're at and what's motivating their weight loss, like, that uninterrogated stuff is just going to keep replicating itself. And usually the place that it's going to keep replicating itself is in folks' treatment, whether they clock it or not, of people who are fatter than them. It feels like a really tricky moment where, in the absence of thinner people being able to hold space for and plumb their own sort of psychological depths on this issue, that work sort of falls to fat people in order to just, like, get through our day, right?
Do you think the booming popularity of these drugs and the ensuing
I really don't think that people think about it that deeply, Aubrey. I mean, I really, really don't. So I can assure you, as somebody, I work in the public a lot, I'm almost never considering how other people view fat people. It's not something that comes up. I don't even think about it. I don't care to think about it. And somehow I make it through the rest of the day. It's pretty wild.
That plays out on the celebrity level and also on a personal level. Do you think it has made fat phobia worse?
Listen, I think anti-fatness is a super multifaceted thing. In doctors' offices, no question. There's just no question that as a fat person, I now have to steel myself for a whole new layer of conversations about, like, why am I not going to take the drug that makes you throw up all the time? Right? For people for whom it does that, I have to, like, come up with a PowerPoint about, like, why I don't want to vomit 5 times a day. Right? Radical. I would say on a cultural level, to me, it just feels like it's brought it back to the surface, which it was slightly beneath for a short time. Do you know?
I don't know.
I mean, like,
I think she's just upset that it changed it. Because they really thought they thought they ate. I'm going to use some Gen Z slang. They thought they were eating, but they were starving. They thought they had left no crumbs, but there were a lot left. And so I think it's a reality check for all of us. Thank God that they really didn't take over everything. But I can assure you, they're not done, you guys. And I still am predicting 2025, fat acceptance resurgence, the Empire Strikes Back moment. I am predicting the fat lash of 2025. I'm writing it down in the calendar. I've done the tarot reading. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't actually done the tarot reading. Anyways. But I feel it in my soul. I know it's coming. And I know that they're going to make it controversial to be against it again. And I'm not going to give a fuck. And I will embrace the reputation era. I will wear snake stuff. I will go for it. I will throw everything in this dining room. I will do it. Period. You know I will. You know I'm that extra. You know I am. You know I am. Because I will say it has been easy to be against it. But if it does resurge, which I feel like it will, just know I'll still be there. I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks. I do not care if it's popular or not. I will still fight it. And I better be out of my deficit by then. Whew, I'm going to need to be, because I'm going to need all my energy. But you guys know I like to fight, so bring it on. Baby, let the games begin. I don't know. Maybe this is just maybe that's just my fantasy. I don't know. Is it my fantasy or is it my burden? If that were to happen, I don't know, but I still feel it. And just know, I'll be there. I'm ready. I'm getting ready. I'm listening to Ready for It over and over again in preparation. Okay? Anyways, let's continue. I'm really on one right now.
It doesn't feel like a meaningful change in people's attitudes. It just feels like a change in how loudly they're willing to shout them. That people were like using,
and you really thought you had control, and you poor thing, you didn't. Okay.
Side voices for a while, and now they're just shouting it from the rooftops.
Speaking of, I was reading this article that I thought was great, called "Ozempic Can't Fix What Our Culture Has Broken" by Tressie McMillan Cotton.
I should read that.
So yeah,
I should read that. We should look at that.
He was writing this article about basically how, I mean, it's said in the title, Ozempic can't fix what our culture has broken. How, these conversations of Ozempic and fat phobia can't be untangled, and we can't expect Ozempic to fix the problem of fat phobia, for it to go anywhere, for a whole number of reasons, cost, health insurance, but also just like the framework of fat phobia in every
I think it's stupid to think that Ozempic is the one answer for all, the one thing that just clicks into place. This issue isn't like that. This issue is complex. It's deeply cultural. It's cultural of the moment, I should say. It's not like a deep historical culture of fatness that doesn't exist. But there is a cultural problem around the issue of weight that does have to be addressed. And I always bring up the United States because, in my opinion, it's especially bad here. And, I feel like in other areas of the world where it's bad, it's through U.S. influence. So this is the root of this bullshit. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. It's bad. And it's rotten to the core. And so it's like we have to really shift the cultural conversation about this in many, many, many different ways. And Ozempic is definitely a tool within that. It is definitely a piece of it, but it is not the only piece of it. And I will constantly say, we need all different types of voices speaking on this. If this is something you feel passionate about, then do it. If this is something you care about, then do it, and do it in your style. Your way of doing it will reach more people. My way of doing it will reach a certain amount of people. Somebody else's way of doing it will reach a different amount of people. All those things matter. It matters. The more people that we can shift the conversation about obesity and weight and all these things, the more successful we will be in changing the culture to a more pro-realism, pro-health conversation. So I feel like it's there. Do I think the fat lash is coming? I honestly do. But I do think that we will do it. We will fight against it. And I am going to keep hitting it while it's down. But I know it's not done. I know it isn't. I feel it in my bones. I just know these things. I just do. I feel it. So, yeah. We're going to be fine, though. I think we're going to make it. But there's a lot of work to do, basically, on a lot of different levels. So much work to do. Ozempic is just one piece. So don't think it's done or it's over or whatever. It isn't. It ain't over until there's no crisis anymore. Okay? We haven't reached that point yet. So anyways, let's continue.
Of our society. She wrote specifically about an interesting experience where she went to the doctor and her doctor took her blood work, because the thing with health insurance is that it will tend to cover drugs like Ozempic if you are diabetic, but not for weight loss if you're not diabetic. And so the doctor took her blood work. She was totally healthy. And the doctor was like, well, we could run it again to try to see if you're diabetic so that we could get health insurance to pay for this for you. And Tressie was like, no, what? I'm healthy. I don't need this.
My version of this was having a tech attempt to take my blood
I don't like this kind of stuff.
pressure. It was either 3 or 4 times in a row because they just couldn't believe that it was like in a normal range. And they thought that something was wrong with the cuff. So they went to go get another cuff, and then they, right? That this is like a very, very common thing that fat folks experience, which is, even when our sort of like blood work is where doctors want to see it, even when our health is sort of in range by all other measures, even healthcare providers can't really bring themselves to believe that we might actually just be okay and just be fat, right? It's
because they're not measuring other things, Aubrey. Okay. That's the problem. There's many, many other things to measure that it's probably not hitting correctly.
It's a heartbreakingly common scenario, I will say. In surveys of fat people, they find that the 2 most common sources of anti-fatness, first of all, an overwhelming majority of fat people experience profound anti-fatness on a daily basis, right? And the 2 most common sources are our family and friends. That's source number 1. And
I can see family for sure.
Number 2 is healthcare providers.
I know, but you're not going to the doctor every single day. And if you are, then obviously you do have a health issue. Just saying.
Are the top places where stuff like this comes up.
But I need her to define what anti-fatness is, and I don't think she has. So it could be anything from not being supported and being super morbidly obese to being actively bullied. We just don't know. She doesn't say.
And those are not things like saying, hey, you ought to pay attention to your blood work, or hey, I have a doctorly thing to say to you as a doctor. That's things like saying, if you don't lose weight, no one's going to want to marry you. And that's things like saying, you know what I mean? Like really hefty steps outside of any kind of professional role. Boy, oh boy.
One of the things Tressie wrote at the end of this article, which I'm just going to read a quick quote.
Yeah, which I don't support any of that. I don't know if I've told you guys, but no, I have told you guys on the channel, obviously, but I don't know if I've told you in this playlist, or not playlist, oh my gosh, this podcast. But when you say things like that, it makes somebody more anxious. So especially when somebody's super morbidly obese, you never want to make them more anxious because their body is so unhealthy, Aubrey, that their body is likely in a constant state of anxiety. So you have to be kind of sensitive to somebody at that level. And that doesn't mean delusional. It doesn't mean overly nice. No. But it means don't say no one's going to marry you if you're fat. That's not helpful at all. for somebody in a super morbidly obese place or somebody that has toxic ritualistic behaviors going on. It's only likely to trigger them into the response because it's just pushing on the anxiety button, which is not helpful whatsoever. So I wouldn't ever say that. I think you can just not say anything. You know, it's okay to not be interested in somebody who's overweight, but you don't have to say it unless somebody asks you. You know, and if they ask, then that's on them. But if they don't, you don't really have to go there. So I think certain things like that, I just don't think it's as helpful as some people think. I understand some of the mindset behind it. And if it works for you, I'm not going to shame you for it. But I would never just volunteer things like that to random fat people that you have no context with or know how they are. Because typically it will just lead to somebody overeating or binge-ing. Okay? Because if they have that problem, that's going to be their first response because you're making them anxious. So just don't. It's not helpful. If you actually want to help the issue, then you got to start going through those barriers with a person. You know, it's like, I always use my mom on this channel, but my mom is super morbidly obese. I would never say something like that to her, but I would say, no, you should do your surgery now so that way you can go to the gym. Which I did say that, by the way. So always remember, if you're ever questioning how to talk to a fat person, keep it logical. Keep it cold. Not cold as in harsh, but cold as in emotionally cool. We'll say cool. Keep it cool when you talk to somebody. The emotional pitch should be as low as possible and as logical and realistic as possible. And you'll notice that most people don't talk about weight in that way. It's always deeply emotional. Saying something like, you're never going to get married if you're fat, that's a very emotional statement. You don't need to say that to somebody. You don't. But if you say like, well, you know, you probably would have an easier time flying on a plane if you lost some weight. That's less emotional. You see? It's more objective as well. It's definitely true. I can attest. It is easier now.
She wrote, the mere existence of Ozempic and the like encourages millions of people to self-diagnose in a way that stigmatizes. If they walk into doctors' offices begging to be classified as medically vulnerable, it's not for some provision from the state like housing or food. They want a drug that can help them manage an environment that works against their aspirations. That is a condemnation of our culture.
Yeah. Yep. It's a real weird time to be fat. So many people are trying to get classified as fat in order to sort of access a bunch of drugs to make them less fat. It's super weird. Tressie nailed it.
Sometimes I feel like in the Hunger Games, have you seen the Hunger Games or read the Hunger Games?
I sure have, and read all the books. Woo.
You know, and like how Katniss goes to like one of the first like Capitol parties, I think it's before her first Hunger Games, and she's like, they would drink poison to make them throw up so that they could eat more. Do you ever have those moments where you're like, oh, we're just in the Capitol?
Right, this is Roman vomitoriums, no joke, right? Like, this is like the classic tale as old as time, barf and then eat more food. Oops, sorry, it's an eating disorder. But like, yes, we're totally in that sort of realm right now. Again, it's just the promise of the 80s infomercials swearing up.
I don't think it's like that. I think it can be, like I said, I've always said when it comes to Ozempic, be very careful if you have an E followed by the letter D. Extremely skeptical. I think it is so easy to abuse within that framework. And you have to be very, very careful. And because you can always abuse a drug, okay? You can. And it would be the same thing with that. So be very careful about doing that, or be very careful about the mindset behind you using it. Is it a real mindset, or is this is my salvation? This is going to do everything for me. I'm never going to have to do anything again, or I'm never going to have to worry about my weight again because I'm taking this medication and I'm fine and this is everything and my whole life is fixed now and I have to do this and do that and da 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 da. And then if it's like, I'm not going to go into any other toxic mindsets, but I can think of so many from my past, like that. Again, I always use 20-year-old Alex as my scapegoat, but I can always think of so many things that 20-year-old Alex would have used Ozempic for. And those things are probably going to lead to massive complications, health issues, if you're using it in that way. So really be skeptical of your mindset, especially if you don't have diabetes. Be very wary of why you're taking it, how you're using it, what are your reasons, are they logical, is it calm, is it from a calm state of mind, is it logical, is it rational, is it calculated, is it a calculated decision, not a reactive decision. Be very careful, okay?
Up and down. You can eat whatever you want and never gain a pound. We're just living that right now, and it's very odd.
Nothing changes. We just see it on smaller screens.
That's I think that was the slogan for Quibi.
Well, that's all we have time for now. I don't know where this leaves us. Do we have any positive parting words for people?
That's a great one.
Sorry, oh my god, I'm making Aubrey Gordon end this on a refrigerator magnet. I'm like, come up with something for like a Hallmark card. That's what makes you beautiful.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Be yourself because everybody else is already taken.
Did you know when you say something's gay like that, you're saying it's bad?
Oh my God.
Coming next week to A Bit Fruity, Hillary Duff.
When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Here's the thing.
God.
This is all incredibly complex. It's incredibly
Dying in millennial right now. Just absolutely dying. Okay. Need to recollect myself.
There are big feelings at play, and that can make it feel really hard to figure out how to move forward in any meaningful way in the conversation. But there are really simple things that we already know how to do that we can do. One, if someone's speculating on someone else's body changing and how that change came to be, tell them to knock it off. It's weird. It's rude. It's being a mean person.
Sorry. You know I'm going to ask it. Come on. You guys have to know. I want you to challenge yourself. What's a bitchy thing you could say to throw a needle into that balloon? Aubrey, do you have the same energy towards fat acceptance people that get upset when people lose weight? Probably not. She wouldn't even acknowledge it. She'd be like, they don't ever do that. What?
Stop it. Honestly, if anybody's
I've heard her talk about it on Maintenance Phase, and she acts like she has no knowledge that fat acceptance people do that.
Anybody else's body, period. Even just observations about weight fluctuations. Think about how you feel and how long you carry it with you when you hear someone else say something about the size or shape of your body. Think about the half-life of how long that lives within you, right? And work on not
a millisecond. I don't know. Not very long. Because I'm not in that disorder anymore, so it doesn't mean that much to me. Like, I appreciate compliments. I'm not gonna lie. I do. But if somebody was like, you look like crap or whatever, I don't know. Okay. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. Let's normalize it not having a long half-life. Let's think about, why is the half-life so long? And are you using it to distract yourself from other things? The answer is probably yes.
Only not being that for someone else, but also heading that number.
I would even suggest, like, me and Eric, we joke about it a lot. That's been like an easier way to cope too, is like when you joke about something and it's funny and you're like laughing about it, it doesn't hurt that much. So like if somebody were to be like, you look fat as fuck or something, I don't know, it wouldn't bother me because I've joked about fatness with Eric so many times throughout the years that it's like, it just doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm so desensitized to it. So sometimes humor can be, you know, a way of making it less biting. Like I used to say, like when I was mid-fat, I used to say, I look like I'm pregnant because my belly was so big. Like everything was going down but my belly. And I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Like I look like I'm starting to get pregnancy belly moment. You know, I was like, what the hell? And so I used to always joke about it in that way. And that did eventually pass. But my friend Lisa, she just did a video where she talked about how she's becoming such a pear. Like as she's lost weight, she's lost mostly up top and she's like so pear. And she put like a picture of a pear over her body and it was like an exact outline. And that kind of stuff is funny. It's like you don't have to think that deeply about it. Like it's not a reflection of your soul or your worth or any of these things. It can just be funny sometimes. Sometimes healing or losing weight or whatever, it's uncomfortable or cringe. It's okay. Just be cringe. Like, don't take it so seriously. Remember, E followed by the letter D, it thrives in seriousness and secrecy. So you want to talk about things with, you know, a therapist or a close friend or, you know, somebody who can understand. And you also want to laugh about it because it is kind of ridiculous. It doesn't matter. You know, it just doesn't matter.
Sense off at the pass when it shows up, right? I think there's real meaningful work to do here in just committing to saying this is behavior that's out of bounds and I'm not going to stand for it. And I think
that keeps it more serious and it keeps it more sensitive and it keeps it more secretive. I think it actually would make the mindsets worse, Aubrey, not better. It'd be better to just not say anything, which is fine.
The Ozempic discourse.
And just not think about it. Just don't allow yourself to dwell on it. Just be like, no, I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to think about that. I'm using it as a distraction from other issues. That's what I'm doing with that. It's ridiculous for me to sit here and obsess over that. It's stupid. Just start there. Because it is stupid. I'm going to tell you, it's stupid. If somebody said, and a lot of these fat activists, they think about something someone said 5 years ago. I mean, if you're really in that zone, like really question, why am I sitting here thinking about a fat comment or a comment that was against my fat body or whatever from 5-10 years ago? Am I distracting myself from something? And it probably is the case, because that's, you know, that's more, especially if you're going back to that memory often, which I've seen Aubrey do that with certain memories of hers. If you're going back to it often, there's something wrong with that. I will just say it's a little pathological. It's obsession over your physical form, which is bad, because when you do that, it can lead to changing certain behaviors around eating in a negative way. So we don't do that, okay?
We have so much behavior that is so out of bounds.
Wow.
My mom is peeking because she wants to go to the airport.
Hi, Mrs. Gordon.
Yes, yeah. Hi, she's waving. So there you go, a mom cameo to end on.
Yeah, I guess the thesis is we should all shut the fuck up. I say on my podcast. Aubrey Gordon, I feel like I've done
I
so
don't
much
think that was that funny, but okay.
promo for you, but where can people
Okay,
find
we're going to leave it there. I'm done. Y'all are done. We're all done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will be doing, I know what I'm going to do for my next one, if I can find it. I'm not going to say it in case I can't, but I have an idea. But you guys will see that next Thursday. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys again soon. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Peace.